It's time to put the cover on this little journal, and I hope you're all revved up and raring to go. If you've just started watching, this is part 2 of our beginners practice junk journal, and we're making 2 fold over journals, a junk journal style and a practice journal. No time for chitty chat, so I'm going to dive straight in. By now you should have your cover template joined and your cover cut out and ready to go. So this is our signature, this is our cover, this is the right way up. If you had text on your cover, you definitely need to look at it this way. So this is the front of our cover. If I was to put that here on my signature and just hold that there like that, you know that this is our front. So that goes like that. So now I'm going to flip it over this way. So now that is our front and that is our back. So when I get my signatures and I put that there, and I'll have a sneak peek under here just to show you that I've kept it right, that is my butterfly facing the right way up. So I want you to do that step and get into the habit of checking that your cover is always the right way up. And then while the pages are still inside, match the cover corner to corner and then crease the spine first with your hand, pick it up and then start using your fingers to do a pinch crease. We're using our fingers instead of creasing it on the table with a bone folder, which by the way you can do if you want a flat sharp spine. Okay, now I've done that, I'm going to push those pages right into that crease. And that is going to give it the roll rather than a full-on crease. And see how much paper I've got left over from the cover? Right now, you make the decision whether or not you want to shorten that and have it just a little bit like we've got at the top, or whether you want to leave it long like that, because you might want to put some tabs on these pages and the tabs will sit out a little bit. While the pages are still in the cover, put a pencil mark how far you want the cover coming past your pages. I'm going to make that 1/8 of an inch just to make this easier. So I'm going to cut off that 1/8 of an inch off both ends. Then take the pages out and move them out of your way. I'm marking the top and the bottom of my page so when I cut it, it's straight. And I'm cutting off 1/8 of an inch both off the front and the back of this cover. Then I'm going to put the pages back in the cover. This has made the cover very close to the page edges, so there's 1/8 of an inch overhang. Now here's what I would do for the practice journal. Instead of cutting off 1/8 of an inch each end, only cut off 1/8 of an inch off one end. You'll be surprised at how much difference it makes. Then put your pages back in the cover and have a look at how close to the edge it is now. And I'm happy with that. So only cut off one end if you're using my pattern and the same amount of pages as me. If you remove 1/8 off the edge of your cover, that's the look you will get. It's close enough to the edge, that's fine. And if you remove 1/8 of an inch off both that end and that end of the cover, it's going to be much closer to the edge of the cover on the front and the back. Just be aware of that. Don't remove too much of your cover, because if you've only got one piece of the cover that you like, you are not going to be able to put it back on. You can fix it with a little piece of lace if you do happen to cut it too short, and that is also the magic of making a practice one first, because if you make a practice one, it doesn't matter if you cut this too short because you're practicing. But if you've only got one piece of the most beautiful cover that you've ever seen, you don't want to be cutting it off too short and then go, uh-oh, I shouldn't have done that. All right, but if you do cut it off too short, we could always put a little piece of lace right down the edge or another piece of paper with a punched edge on it, and that'll fix it. So that is how you size your cover. Either remove none and leave it the full length of the cover with a wider bit at the edge, remove 1/8 of an inch and have a little bit at the edge, or remove 1/8 of an inch off both sides and have it quite snug to the edge. These are all the decisions you make as you're making your journal. Now that we've got our cover all sized with our pages on the inside, we're going to mark our holes and punch the holes in there, ready to sew the pages into the cover. Now this is what you need to help with poking your holes in. A phone book, some clamps, a pokey tool. You can have a bookbinder's pokey tool, or this one here is one that's used for clay modelling, or just one that's a paper craft tool. To punch the holes, you'll need your 3-hole template. Have it cut out around the black line, and with the print facing you, just fold it in half, corner to corner, and crease it down the centre. We'll start off with our practice book and open it up at the centre. Now just get your pages even, top and bottom, to the cover. And the pages need to be pushed right into the fold of your cover. And then you just, with it semi-folded, you see how I've got it semi-folded? And then just put that there. Then get your template where it's marked top. Make sure this is the top of your journal, and put the top of your template and the top of your journal together, and just put that into the center with your thumbs, your fingers on the outside. So you're just resting it, you're just holding it like this, thumbs on the inside, and you'll notice that this template is a little bit longer than your pages. There's a red dash line is around about where your pages will be, and the cut line is where your cover will be. So once that's in place there, just move your clamp down so that it holds the template as well. And you can put your other clamp on the other side. Open up your phone book anywhere to the middle, anywhere, well, close as you can to the middle. And once your phone book's open to the middle, it has this little cradle in here. Now that is perfect to sit your book in, the spine of your book, and that gives it something to hold on to. So once that's in there, you just turn it around to wherever it's going to feel right for you. Grab your pokey tool, whichever one you're using, and then just put that pokey tool on the center dot, and with your pages almost closed, just using your left hand to hold your pages and your right hand to push down on your pokey tool, you'll hear it crunch when it goes down through the pages and through the cover. Then move it up to the top hole, put your pokey tool on the hole, and then just push down until it goes all the way down into here. Same, move it down to the bottom, put your pokey tool on that dot and push down. Now you've got your holes marked through your pages and out through to the edge of your cover. Now what you can do now is take your clamps off, take your template out. Now the holes are a bit small when you use just the tip of your pokey tool. So I'm going to re-poke the holes by getting my pokey tool and pushing them back in a second time to make the holes bigger. You've got to give it a bit of a wiggle to help loosen up those holes and then pull it back out. This will make it a lot easier to thread the needle through. Right, now that one is ready for sewing. Now we've put the holes in the practice journal, we have to think a little bit more about the junk journal style. It's different because we have to, 1, make sure the cover is up the right way. 2, make sure the pages are facing the right way up. 3, we need to put the pages in line with the 3 stitch holes. It's important that when you're preparing to put your holes in, that you don't go gung-ho. Take your time, flip your pages through and have a think about how things work. Right, now, the first thing we're going to do is, before we put our holes in, this template is marked top. The cover is facing the right way up. This is our top. The pages in here are upside down. So what you need to do is flip your signature up the right way and do a quick check. Make sure all of your pages are the right way up. Make sure they're all placed where you want them to be. This page here, if I turn the template this way, you'll notice that this hole here and this hole here is not going to catch this page here. The hole will just miss it and just miss it, but it'll catch it in the middle. So what I'm going to do for this one, they're going to move it to the bottom, and I can have a little bit of my coloured paper showing there, and I can do it like that. Now when I put this template back on here, I can see that it's going to get a hole there and a hole there, and this page is going to get caught in a little better than if I had it straight in the middle. So I'm going to leave that page there like that. And I'm just going to quickly check and make sure all my pages are in the right way. That one is good to go. I'm just going to center it a little bit better than it is. Check. It's going to fit in my 3 holes nicely. I'm happy where that is sitting. This is the last chance you've got at doing this. Oh, see, this one's up really high. I'm going to shimmy it down. And you notice that I didn't fix where my pages are up ages ago. I didn't do that because I'd only have to do it again now. So you don't need to do that. Checking, those 3 dots are going to fit this page just as well, and everything else is going to work out fine. Because my cover is bigger than my pages, I'm going to take my pages out separate, do a last minute tap top and bottom, and you do that by resting the spine on the table, putting your fingers either side of your signature and tapping it inside your hand. Now put the pages back in the cover and open them up in the center. If you need to, you can put your ruler into the center of the pages and push all the pages towards the spine. This will help make sure that they're all pressed firmly together, just to get them down in there as tight as I can. This time I'm going to clamp this way and this way, and that is going to hold my signatures in place into the cover, and I'm going to leave it right where it is. If I feel that it's too low there and too high there, this is the time I unclamp it and I just grab my signatures here and I bring them up a tiny bit so that it's more even, and I'll clamp it again. Take your time and move things around if you need to. Right, now that's ready to go. I'll just change this back to the way I need it to be. Bring your phone book back over and put the fold line into the fold line of these signatures, using your left hand here to keep your signatures almost closed. Put your template back in, making sure the top is the top, the bottom is the bottom. Push that template down into the fold. If you've got another clamp, just put it over the edge to hold it in place. Right, now once that is in place, we're going to do the same again. We're going to put the pokey tool on that center dot and then just push it straight down. All right, now we've got our pages almost closed. Move up to the top hole and do the same again. Pushing down. Move it down to the bottom hole, pushing down. Now you can see this one's come out on the side a little bit. I put holes in these covers all the time, and even I can have a hole come out off the side. Now the reason that this has happened for me is because I've done this one-handed. I was using my phone to do some filming on this view here. But the good thing is about these types of journals is if you do come off to the side, we cover it with another piece of paper, a piece of fabric, or a piece of lace. And then also, once you put your stitch in there, that also helps to disguise it. I wouldn't try to poke another hole through that. You know, you really could, but I would not try to poke another hole through that. When you try to poke a second hole, that shows up. So leave it alone. So now we can remove our template, and you can leave your clamps here ready for sewing. Now if you're not used to sewing, I don't want you to be worried about doing this. You're going to be hand sewing. This is what you're going to need to sew the signature in the cover. A heavy needle. You can go to Walmart or the cheap shop here in Australia. I think it's a reject shop. You can go to Big W and get yourself one of these bigger style needles. This is an embroidery floss. You can get this anywhere as well. You can get it at the reject shop, Big W, Walmart, any place that sells craft. You pick your thread to work with your cover if you are not covering over this edge. Right, now if you're going to put some trim over the side here, you wouldn't worry about what colour comes out here. Now if you're having your thread show up on the inside, you pick your colour so that when you tie this into the inside, you've got the colour that you like showing up here. So you could either use a blue, that way it works with the outside and the inside for this one, or you can pick a brown, for instance. It doesn't matter, the brown is going to look good on the outside and it's going to look good on the inside. If you do happen to buy the cheaper version of this, don't separate the threads. These come in about 6 strands and they're all put together. Don't separate them. Keep them all together if you're buying a cheap version of this thread, because they will break. So I'm going to use this with all the threads together. So I'm just going to pull out enough. So I'm going to go 1 length, 2 lengths, and 3 lengths of my book with a generous length. I'm not going to need that much, but I've got plenty of thread, so I'm not going to skimp on it. Just to make this video go a bit quicker, I'm going to use this needle with the biggest eye because that way, using this thread, I can thread it quickly. Now I'll cut out that little bit about threading because you don't want to watch me take 5 minutes to thread my needle. I've switched over to the practice journal to show you how to do the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. What I suggest you do is have your awl handy, because sometimes when you're putting your needle through the holes, you can't find your way through all the papers. So the awl comes in handy to realign your holes. Now I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be doing a combination of having my book on the table, holding it in the air, and I'm also going to be turning it around. So it's going to be the right way up sometimes, sideways and upside down. So I'm going to start by having my journal on the table, and I'm going to open it up to the center. So I'm going to start by putting my needle in the center hole from the inside and taking it to the outside all the way through all the pages and the cover. So see how I'm using the table? You don't have to hold on to your needle all the time. You can put it down. So I'm going to put a paper clamp here on the end of my embroidery thread, and that's just so it won't pull all the way through this hole. So now I'm picking up my journal and I'm turning it all the way around, and I'm going to sew through the top hole from the outside, bring my needle through to the inside. Doesn't matter if you come through your cover first and then line up your pages. It actually helps. Right, now I'm on the inside and I've got one long stitch on the outside of my cover. So I'm just pulling it snug. Don't pull it too tight, because you'll just pull that clamp straight off your tail. So I'm going to miss that middle hole, and I'm going to come down to the opposite end on the inside and put my needle back through all of the pages and the cover and bring my needle back through to the outside. And I'm just going to bring the inside thread over this clamp here and pull this long stitch a little bit snug. Closing my book again, I've got to come back to the middle hole from the outside and bring my needle back to the inside. So I'm going to come back to the inside and I'm going to move that first stitch up to the top a little bit and move it out of the road. I'm going to come back to the outside and try and put my needle through that hole again. Now, if your needle doesn't go straight through, it's pretty much not gonna. When this happens, you've either got to try and put your needle through the cover and the pages individually, or you can bring your awl back in, and this is a great tip. So I'm just going to put my needle down for a second, open up my pages and grab my awl. Then from the inside, I'm going to bring my awl back through the same hole and find the direction of that hole again. So I'm going to hold the pages so that nothing moves, and now when I put the needle through, it goes through all the way without any obstruction. I'm going to pull that needle back through to the center of my journal. So now I've got my 2 stitches on the outside. Now looking at it from the inside, when I pull this long stitch aside, you'll notice both my tail and my needle stitch is on the right hand side of my book. I need one on the left and one on the right. So I'm going to duck my needle under that long stitch and take the needle off now. I can take the clip off, and I'm going to turn my book around, because when I pull my stitches, I want to pull them from top to bottom. So I'm going to pull them tight and then line it up. So make sure your pages are even top and bottom. And then come back, grab these threads again, and then pull them. Don't get too vicious here. You just want to get a nice ping on your stitches here, like a guitar string. hold that down in the center and tie a knot. Once you've tied your first knot, just check it. You can always check this before you tie your knot, but I could feel it was right, so I'm going to tie a second knot just to make sure it stays in place. And that's it. Practice. It's all about practice. So give this a couple of goes and get used to doing this before you go ahead and tackle the bigger journals. Now here's the junk journal style, all done. I've gone ahead and I've sewn this off camera. I've used exactly the same 3-hole pamphlet stitch. I've used the blue embroidery floss. You can use a light string, a cotton or a wax thread. Now remember I poked this top hole off to the side? This is what it looks like with a stitch in it. It doesn't look too bad at all. If you're going to worry about this type of thing, don't concentrate on the one thing that went wrong out of the whole journal. We can go ahead now and we can fix that up. You can see how close my pages got to the edge of the cover at the front and the back. And remember, this is the one that I cut off 1/8 of an inch at the back and 1/8 of an inch at the front. Now move on to the next section and we'll embellish the cover. Now if you want to make your little junk journal look like a junk journal, we're going to put an image on the cover and some fabric down the side. To embellish the cover need not cost you an arm and a leg, and I'll show you why. I made my girlfriend a handbag. This was a beautiful handbag and it was made out of these table runners. I kept a little piece of the fabric that was left over. This piece of fabric here I got for $1 from the charity shop. As soon as I saw this, I thought, oh yeah, I can see covers in this little piece of fabric. Then I got these images off the Graphics Fairy. Now this one here is a 185 GSM. It's the cream coloured cardstock. This one here is plain white 200 GSM cardstock. And believe it or not, this feels heavier than this, but it's just different brands. Now these images from the Graphics Fairy I printed out at 70% because I wanted them to be able to fit on the front of my book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear these out, and I'm also going to show you in particular with this one. Say if I use this one to go with this fabric, because I picked my images out to sort of work with my cover and work with my fabric. Say this one for instance. If I was going to use this one and I tore down here and then I put my fabric over the top, I'm going to lose the beak of my bird. So I'm going to show you how I get around that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tear down this side so I get that nice tatty look. This side I'm going to use my ruler and I'm going to keep a little bit of the white paper here because we're not going to see that. So I'm just going to use my ruler and tear that down there. Then I'm going to tear across the top and the bottom. So when I put my image on the cover, the torn edge is going to be here. I know that I'm going to have a little bit of the fabric coming over here, and I can now have that close to the beak without losing my bird. If I wanted to have it further over, I pull it right to that white line and put it to there, and I'll just tear more off here. So that gives me a lot more of this to use. All right, so that's the first one done. I'll just go ahead and I'll rip these out and I'll be back in a second. So we'll have a little look at my main journal first. So I'd like that one there, and This one here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work out whether I'm going to use this fabric on here or this fabric here. So to do that, I'm going to tear my fabric pieces as well. Now I'm not sure how well this fabric tears, so I'll do a test tear. No, it's not going to tear. But I tell you that this fabric frays really easy, so I don't have to worry about it fraying or not. So I'm just going to put it on here and work out whether or not I can rip this piece. So I'm going to put a little snippet here first to get me started, and then see if I can tear this piece. No, she's as tough as nails. So this is not going to tear either. Some fabric tears easy and some does not. I'm going to cut it at around about 4 inches. I know this is going to fray, and if it doesn't, I'm going to help it to fray. It's upholstery fabric, so it's a little bit heavier than the norm, but that's what I'm after. This piece is a little bit bigger than this one because this is all I had to work with. So I'm going to sit this on here because this is the image I want to use on this cover, and this is the right way up for this fabric. So you can turn your fabrics around and use them upside down. You don't have to use things the right way up. See, you can't even tell. And see how this is starting to fray of its own accord, even though I hand cut it. So that looks pretty good on there. Right, I think this needs something else at the top and the bottom, and we're getting close. So that's that piece. Let's have a look at this one. And that suits the birds. Does it suit this? I think it does. I think it looks all right. So I'm going to cut that edge off because I don't need it this wide. I can put that there, and I like this one because it's got that flower on the front. So I can put that there. Then I'm going to snip that pretty close to the cover edge. Maybe even a smidget longer, just so that when I fray it, it's going to fray just over the cover. Gosh, which one do you like? That one or that one? They both look really good, but I'm going to go with that one on here because it really suits the birds. Right, now what I'm also going to do is I want it to fray, so I'm going to get my pokey tool. Well, actually this is my modelling tool, my clay modelling tool, and I'm going to fray out a little bit of those edges. So when you hand cut your fabric, just fray it by hand. That's going well. I'm going to distress ink the edges using Vintage Photo. It's my favorite. Because it's torn edge, I'm actually using that motion to just get that edge really burnished or really coloured, more so than bringing the ink in on the paper. If I need to bring any in on the paper, I can add it. But I also want to rough up the edges of the here first and then have a look at what it needs. This is a 𝗀𝗵cie tool. I'll put where you can get these from Amazon in the links below. If you don't have one of these or can't get one of these, just use a pair of scissors. So I'm just going to rough up the edges, and that will help it just match the tatty fabric piece and the torn paper. So there, I'll use the scissors now. Whether or not you use your fussy cut scissors or your normal scissors, just open up the scissors and just drag it along the edge. Now you've got to be careful because sometimes the scissors can be sharp and start cutting into your paper. So pick it up and just drag it along the edge of the paper. You can leave your edges. This is all optional. Distress ink those edges again. I'm not using it like I would as if I was colouring pages. I'm just doing the white edge part of that paper. I'm putting my sponge back on the ink every time just so I get some good colour. Okay, see how that's tied that in now? Just distressing the edge of that cover has changed it a lot. What I want to do now is put something above it and something below it. You could leave it like this. You could do this and just add some ties on it and you'd be right. I've got some vintage lace here, but you don't have to use vintage lace. Of course, you can go to the charity shop and chop off some lace off an old garment. Just go through whatever you've got. If you haven't got anything, just go to the reject shop and buy something. Use the same colour at the top and the bottom. You could definitely use a whole piece like this. This is not too difficult to buy, a piece like this that is not vintage. So I'll just cut this off and show you what this looks like. That will fray as well. So let's fray it. You've still got the colour of your cover there peeking through, and there's no vintage lace inside. So that looks pretty good. Now you cannot tell that we missed the mark on putting the hole right on the spine there. You'll never know. You don't tell anyone. Right, so there's that idea. If you're using your plain practice cover here, this would work perfectly. We'll bring this one over and look at that. There is no reason whatsoever why you can't use a totally plain cover. Look at that. So I'll go ahead and I'll scruff up the edge of this. I'm going to use this piece on here. I'm going to keep this one for over here and this one here. I'm going to use a piece of lace like that on this one. And I'm going to use this fabric here, and I'll get my bird image ready to put on here, and I'll be back in a second. Now I've distressed the edges of this practice cover, and I have also distress inked the edges with Vintage Photo. I'm going to do this one first, and I'm just going to use this wide store-bought lace. I'm using the 𝗀𝗵cie fabric glue. The equivalent to this is Fabri-Tac. And I'm using the sweet Sugar Bell squeezy bottle. This is good for controlling how much glue I use. Now, because this lace has no real back or front, it's really hard to tell. I'm just going to pick a side. So I'm going to put some glue down just the edge side. I'm only putting it on the solid bits of the lace. You can't see real well on video, but I'm not putting a lot of glue. And I'm just going to put it on the edge of my cover, and I'm just patting it down. No glue's coming out anywhere. So I've flipped the lace back over, and now I'm putting dots of glue behind each one of these diamond patterns all over the front of the cover, but not on the edge bit, right, that scallop bit right on the edge. And I'm just laying it down and patting it again right across the front of the cover. I cut this bit off because I don't need that bulk over on the edge near the spine. So I'm adding a bit more glue under those diamond pieces and patting it down again. Now I'm going to glue my bird image straight over the top of the lace piece. I do lots of squiggly glue lines around the center, and then I'll come back last and do a straight line around the edge, between 1/4 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch from the edge. On this book, I've equaled the space on the top and the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is put my fabric piece around the spine. Now to do this, I'm going to wrap it around the spine. You can see here it's the same at the front and the back. Once I've done that, I'm going to lay it on the table, and you can put a little mark, but What I like to do is I like to put a bit of glue on the edge of my spine cover. See how I'm staying away from the very edge? I just go close to the edge and then back across the top, down the middle near the spine and across the bottom. Now I'm going to put the glue back on the cover, down the spine. I've also noticed that the birdie was lifted up a bit, so I just put a bit more glue under that. So now I'm just adding some squiggly lines of glue where the spine fabric is going to lay over the front of the cover. Don't come out too far because you've got that single line of glue on that fabric piece there. So when you fold it over and lay it down, don't stretch it too far. Just let it lay down gently. See how I'm stretching it with my left hand, but I'm not overstretching it? I'm being very gentle with it and patting it down, and just until I see it sitting in a straight line. The bottom bit here is in line with the bottom of my cover and the same at the top. Now I've flipped it over and I took note where the fabric ended on my cover, and I've put my finger there, and I'm going to start putting the glue in a little bit from my finger. Then I'm going to just do squiggly lines inside that area. I'm going to do the same as I did on the front and put a single line of glue around the fabric piece, close to the edge but not right on the edge. It's easier to work this way. Then I'm just going to fold that fabric back over again, not stretching it excessively, just patting it down until I see that straight line. And I forgot to mention that I didn't put any glue in this spine area. It just doesn't need it. It'll let the book open and close nice and easy. So that's a practice journal done. You can always go further with this. You can add as much embellishment as you like. You can add flowers, you can add buttons, you can put so much more on this. This is just the bare basics. So now this one, I'm going to move through this one a little bit faster. And I'm going to do the same on this one. The only difference is I'm going to use narrow lace above and below the birdie here. So I'm going to start by putting a little bit of glue in the center of the birdie, and what this will do is it'll sort of hold it in place for me, so I can then go ahead and just glue some lace underneath the birdie at the bottom here. So I can just lift the bottom of the birdie up and put my glue under there and tuck the lace in. I do the same at the top, and then I just come back and put a little bit more glue over the top of the lace and glue the birdie down properly. We're going to do exactly the same as we did with that first journal. Make sure the pieces are level at the front and the back. Add your glue to the fabric and your cardstock cover and lay it down. Get that nice rolled edge around your spine, and this one is all finished as well. Now look at these pair together. Which one is the practice journal? At the end of the day, you can't tell the difference. Keep practicing. These are the ideal journal for you to practice with. Get used to cutting out your pages. Get used to handling one signature only. Get used to doing the 3 pamphlet stitch. Don't use your best lace. Don't use your best fabric. Just have a practice with this recycled stuff. Nothing on here is over special. Everything is recycled. Everything. You'll feel a lot better if you use things that aren't precious. Now, even if you haven't got any fabric at home here, just start making your journal. Put your pages together, stitch in your pages, and next time you go to town, go to the charity shop and get yourself a piece of fabric and finish off your cover. Be patient. Don't be in a hurry to get your practice journal made. You'll enjoy it a lot more if you just take your time and don't expect to make yourself a Nick the Booksmith journal the first time you make one. Next comment I see from you, I want to hear you say, Donna, I just got started. Doesn't matter which one you do. Doesn't matter as long as you get started. And if you get stuck, leave me a comment because I'm on here almost every day. Ciao for now.